windows. Alright, I'm a red dog. I know how it.
For many, many years now, I've wanted to write a locked room mystery, and because I've been a big fan of locked room mysteries in the past, especially locked room mysteries of the so-called golden age of the 1930s. Agatha Christie was writing locked room mysteries, and John Dixon Carr, Murder in the Rue Morgue, and The Mystery of the Yellow Room. There's all these great locked room mysteries, and I've always wanted to write those. And but I thought to myself, well, locked room mysteries they're kind of an old form and they're a little bit boring. Would it be possible to take that 1930s form, the locked room mystery, and put it inside a modern noir thriller? And I didn't know if that was actually possible. And I thought, well, how would you actually do that? And I thought, well, you could have a manhunt plot, and part of the key to finding the person who is missing is solving this locked room mystery. And so I really carefully designed the structure of the book first before I wrote anything. And I thought, well, I have to have the locked room mystery here, and I have to give the clues for the mystery here, 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 and here. And I have to structure this really, really carefully. And when you're designing that kind of a book, you have to give the reader all the information so that you can't cheat. You can't say, by the way, there's this thing I forgot to tell you on page 297. I should have told you this on page 34, but, I didn't. You can't cheat and do that. And you can't have a solution that involves, I hate those ones where they have solutions that involve magic or the supernatural, and it ruins the logic of the story. So I knew I could not do anything like that. I didn't want to cheat the reader. I had to give them all the information that Duffy has and let them solve it at the same time as Duffy, and have no cheating.
So do you see yourself in any of your characters or stories?
Oh, yeah, there's a bit of Duffy in me, and there's a bit of me and Duffy, definitely. We share the same taste in music, more or less, although he's a little less tolerant of the Smiths than I am. I'm actually a big fan of the Smiths, whereas Duffy hates them. I think we share the same recreational choices a lot of the time. We share the same taste in cigarettes, shall we say, and the same choice in booze, and I even have his T-shirt and leather jacket. So there's a lot of me and Duffy. He's a little bit more reckless than I am. I certainly wouldn't do the things that he does. I believe I'm a better driver than he is. He drives rather recklessly across the countryside and often doesn't wear a seatbelt. But I also think you're, as a novelist, you're in all your characters. I mean, there's even a bit of the villains that I'm in and a bit of the villains in me, and that makes it more interesting too.
One thing many of your characters seem to have in common is an internal drive to never give up. No matter how bad situations get, they persist until the job is done. Is that you, or is there something about that character that attracts you, that sort of strong-willed character?
That's not me. I'm a quitter. If things aren't working for me, I'll generally get pretty depressed and give up. I mean, you have no idea how many chapter ones of novels I have in my drawer. I think there's about 20 of them, where I'll write chapter one and think it's the best thing I've ever written and leave it for a week and come back later and read it and just go, oh my God, this is awful. And so I'll give up and never look at that again and be embarrassed to even think about it. So I'm a quitter, but I think characters in books, if you have them quit, or if you have them stop the investigation, especially detectives, it's going to be a fairly tedious book for the second half. So you have to keep them slogging through. And then the question you have to ask yourself was, why are they slogging through? And I think the question with Duffy is this. Ultimately, he's got nothing else but his professionalism. His personal life is not going that well. His emotional life is a wreck. And I think that if it wasn't for his professionalism, for his work ethic, then he would just be a complete mess. And so that's the one tether that he holds on to in a society that's falling apart all around him. And with literally anarchy in the streets, the one thing that he has to hold to is that he's damn good at his job.
Who has been your biggest influence as a writer?
Oh, so many influences. When I was in high school, I discovered Cormac McCarthy, and I felt that I was the only person in Northern Ireland who had ever heard of him, especially his early Tennessee books, which are set among the Ulster Scots settlers of Tennessee and Kentucky. And I loved him. Stylistically, he's a very difficult writer to try and copy or to be influenced by, but I just loved Cormac McCarthy. And I grew up in the tradition of great English writers like Evelyn Waugh and J.G. Ballard and P.G. Wodehouse. I love that. And I love putting comedy in my books, basically from that background. James Joyce, we all did in school, and Samuel Beckett and Oscar Wilde. I loved his prose. And then after I came to America, I discovered all these guys that I'd never read before. Daniel Woodrell was a huge influence on me, the crime writer, and I still read whenever a new Daniel Woodrell novel comes out. And then it was only later that I discovered Scottish noir, particularly Ian Rankin, and even more so, perhaps, Ian Banks. I loved his Scottish noir books and also his science fiction novels.
Any idea what actor you would like to see play your characters?
That's a good question. I think for the Cold Ground, what were they talking about? They wanted an older Irish actor. For me, my ideal actor would be Michael Fassbender, but I think he's gotten too big to do TV. You know who I thought of for the Cold Ground as well? Daniel Radcliffe's dad is from Northern Ireland. And I saw Daniel Radcliffe doing his father's accent, and it was extraordinary. He was like this. Right there, how's it going? This is how my dad speaks. And I was just going, wow. And I saw him playing Allen Ginsberg in that film, Kill Your Darlings. And I thought, wow, Daniel Radcliffe would be fantastic in this. You know, if Michael Fassbender is too big and Daniel Radcliffe is looking to change direction, this might be the perfect vehicle for him. And as for Dead I Well May Be, when they thought about doing it as a film about 3 or 4 years ago, now they've switched to thinking about doing it as a TV series. When they thought about doing it as a film, they had Colin Farrell in mind, and I don't know if that's still the plan or whether they have someone else that they're thinking of.
So I wanted to do a quick video about all 6 Duffy books now that they're all out in audiobook and in Australia and America and UK. The only place they haven't been published yet is Germany, and that's going to happen later in the year. So what I wanted to do with this series, James Joyce is a genius. So what he was able to do in Ulysses, he was able to capture the whole of Dublin on one particular day, if you remember, June 16th, 1906, when he met Nora Barnacle for the first time, and he weaves his 2 characters throughout the city in that one day. Now, I don't have, obviously, Joyce's genius, so it took me 6 books to capture Belfast in the period 1980 to 1988, which was the period I remember most of the Troubles, when I was in high school and starting to become aware of the world for the first time. And the thing that always struck me as very strange about that period was not just the surreal nature of the continual violence in this low-level civil war, but also the crack. And by that I mean how funny and how dark and this black humor that people had in that era. And I felt that it had never been conveyed anywhere, really. If you watch, they made a lot of Troubles films, a lot of these Troubles mixploitation type films in the 80s and 90s. And even the good ones by artists like Neil Jordan aren't that good because it's an outsider perspective. It's not an interior critique. And what I've done with these Troubles books, hopefully, is give you an interior critique of what the Troubles were really like in that period, the people who lived them, the people who responded to them, the people who were reacting to events, and how they reacted to these events by using sarcasm and black humor and jokes. And I write through the medium of crime fiction, so I told 6 crime novels about my detective, Sean Duffy, who's navigating all these different worlds, Protestant, Catholic, all these dualities, as Sean says at one point, Prestaval versus Schraderval, black versus white, Protestant versus Catholic, all these boring, obvious dichotomies and dualities, and Sean's navigating these interlacing worlds of British, Irish, Protestant, Catholic, man, woman, spook versus civilian. And hopefully through these 6 novels, I've helped convey in my own way what life was really like in this period, and provided 6 action, interesting stories that help project a fairly accurate version of that world. Obviously, it's exaggerated because you want to tell a story with a beginning, middle, and end, and a lot of action and adventure. So, which is the medium of the noir novel. So, anyway, all 6 books are now out in every country in the world on audiobook and on ebook, and these are the titles. Some of them longer than others, as you can see. They're all Tom Waits songs, of course, and that's it. That's all I have to say. What comes next, I have no idea.